Today, we're going to talk about a silent emergency, one that can happen in basically any home. It's called foreign body aspiration. And look, it's a major cause of preventable injuries and even death, especially when it comes to kids. So understanding the hidden dangers in just everyday objects is really the first step to keeping everybody safe.
Okay, so take a second and really think about this. I mean, we all have one of those drawers, right? The one that's just stuffed with coins, buttons, spare parts, all those little odds and ends. So what in there actually poses the biggest threat to, say, a curious kid? Is it a sharp pen? A little piece of a toy? Well, the answer is probably going to surprise you.
For a whole lot of us, the answer is this: a tiny button battery. I know, it looks completely harmless, but if one of these gets lodged in an airway, its electrical current can cause these absolutely devastating chemical burns in less than 2 hours. It's a perfect example of the kind of hidden dangers we're going to be diving into. So let's just make sure we're on the same page with the terminology. We're talking about foreign body aspiration, or FBA for short. It's basically what happens when something goes down the wrong pipe. It gets inhaled into the lungs instead of swallowed into the stomach. And this is not just some minor choking incident. This is a time-critical, full-blown medical emergency. The signs aren't always super obvious. Of course, you can have that sudden, really intense choking moment, but sometimes it's way more subtle. It could be a cough or a wheeze that just won't go away. Or a classic red flag is when doctors listen and only hear breath sounds on one side of the chest. Even getting pneumonia over and over again without a clear cause, that should make you think, could this be FBA? So what are the actual objects that cause the most trouble? Well, in this first section, we're going to look at the most common culprits, and you'll see they are pretty much always things we handle every single day. Now, this is where it gets really interesting when you see the breakdown. I mean, look at that. Food is the #1 culprit, 40% of cases. We're talking about things like peanuts and grapes. Then you've got coins coming in at a strong second, followed by little toy parts. Literally every category here is a common household risk. And what's really important to get is that the risk actually changes with age. So for toddlers, the big danger is often food. A peanut, for example, is just the perfect size and shape to completely plug up a small airway. But for kids who are a little bit older, the risk shifts to stuff like coins, which, believe it or not, are historically the most common object found in these pediatric cases. This quote from the medical literature is, well, it's chilling. A piece of a latex balloon isn't just an obstruction. Because it's so flexible and waterproof, it can create a perfect airtight seal right over the voice box. It literally acts like a valve, making it impossible to breathe. It's one of the most lethal things on this list, hands down. And these risks can also be really specific to certain cultures or routines. In many communities, it's super common to hold scarf or hijab pins between your lips while you're getting dressed. But an accidental gasp or a laugh, that can send that sharp pin straight down into the airway. It's a perfect example of how a totally normal daily routine can carry this hidden risk. Okay, now we have to talk about the items that are in a class of their own. These aren't just things that block the airway. They actively destroy tissue. When one of these is involved, the clock is ticking. And I mean minutes, even seconds, truly matter. And here they are. We already talked about #1, the button batteries. But look at the others. Iron tablets, certain other pills that are caustic, magnets, and of course, corrosive liquids. All of these things have the potential to cause severe, incredibly rapid chemical or pressure damage to the delicate lining of the airway. This is why button batteries are so terrifying. It's not just that they're blocking something, they're creating an electrical circuit. The battery generates a chemical called hydroxide, which is a strong alkali, and it causes something called liquefaction necrosis. That's a fancy term for it literally dissolves the tissue it's touching, and it happens fast. And pills aren't much better. An iron tablet doesn't just sit there. It dissolves into this caustic slurry that just burns the airway. Other pills, even really common ones like metformin, can cause severe inflammation and lead to long-term scarring or narrowing of the airway. So the danger doesn't stop even if the pill itself is gone. All right, let's shift gears for a minute. The medical journals are just filled with these case reports that are almost too strange to be true. So we're going to run through some of the absolute most bizarre objects that have ever been found in a human lung. First up, a live fish. Yep, you heard me right. There are multiple reports of people, usually kids, accidentally inhaling small fish while they're swimming. And the spiny fins make them incredibly hard to get out, sometimes even requiring emergency surgery right into the windpipe. And sticking with the live creature theme, we have leeches. If you inhale them from contaminated water, they'll actually attach to the inside of your airway. The main symptoms? Unexplained bleeding from the lungs and, no surprise, a lot of trouble breathing. The medical term for them is literally live endobronchial foreign bodies. Now this one is just incredible. In cases of facial trauma from a gunshot, the bullet can actually be deflected and inhaled into the airway. But what's really wild is that sometimes they aren't even discovered for years, or even decades later, just sitting there. And this detail is both fascinating and kind of eerie. A tiny toy whistle, if it's aspirated, can actually make a whistling sound every single time the person breathes. It's a sign that's hiding in plain sight, or I guess plain sound, that can sometimes be missed for years and just mistaken for something like asthma. Okay, after hearing all of that, you might be feeling a little anxious, and that's totally understandable. But the final, and honestly the most important part of this whole thing, is about empowerment. So let's talk about what you can actually do to prevent this and how you should respond if it ever happens. It is so important to separate prevention from response. Prevention is all the proactive stuff, cutting food like grapes and hot dogs into safe sizes for toddlers, keeping coins and batteries and little toys out of reach. The response part is for an active, ongoing emergency. And one of the most important rules is to never, ever do a blind finger sweep. You could actually push the object in deeper, and critically, always seek emergency care after a choking incident, even if the object seems to be out. So let's just distill this down into a really simple action plan. If you see a kid suddenly start coughing after eating or playing, you should suspect FBA and get them checked out. If you see a child playing with a button battery, you need to treat that as an immediate, time-critical threat. When you're making food for a toddler, remember to avoid those dangerous round shapes like whole nuts and grapes. And if you see someone holding pins in their mouth, now you know enough to just gently advise them of the risk. And just to show you that this can happen in the most unexpected ways, think about this. A capsule endoscope is this tiny little camera you swallow so doctors can see your digestive tract. Well, a recent review found 39 cases where that high-tech pill was accidentally inhaled into the lungs instead. It just proves that pretty much anyone can aspirate anything. So we'll end with this question. After learning about the risks of everything from a grape to a button battery to a hijab pin, what are you going to look at differently in your own home? Because at the end of the day, that awareness, that's the most powerful tool we have to prevent these silent emergencies.